All right, we are live. Welcome to Paradigm Shift TV 314. This is your brother, Pianhki Muntu Neferamon Ra, and we got a powerful show for you with a powerful Kemetic queen. But before we start, let me do my usual greeting. Let me say Hotep to my fellow Kemetic brothers and sisters. Let me say God bless to my Christian brothers and sisters. Let me say Assalamu alaikum to my brothers and sisters in the NOI. Let me say Shalom to my Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters. Let me say Islam to my Moorish brothers and sisters. Let me say peace to my brothers and sisters in the nation of gods and earths. And let me say Jambo to the rest of my brothers and sisters throughout the African diaspora, be it here in the wilderness of the United States of America or beyond. As you know, I say that greeting for one reason and one reason only. It's because if you're Black, I'm with you, and I hope that you're with me. We can disagree without being disrespectfully disagreeable. We can have unity without uniformity. And with that, my queen, please reintroduce yourself to the Paradigm Shift TV 314 audience.
MenyetAnkhEnMaat. I am Menyet Ankh Menta, and I just want to say hello, greetings, and naham to you for having me back. Have this important conversation. Menta, and I'm like, oh, it's nothing like hearing your own voice and just make you like, oh, that's what
We're good now. Sorry about that.
No worries.
So we're here to talk about a very, very interesting and important topic, dating while Kemetic.
Yes.
And so with that being said, I'm going to ask you this. Why is this topic so intriguing for you in particular, would you say?
Oh, Lord. So this topic is very important just because it's a topic that's not only very popular right now, like on social media, but it's also a topic that if you're anything like me, your parents didn't talk to you about dating. They didn't talk about its function, what it's for. It was just, don't come home with no babies, stay away from boys, all they want is one thing, keep your nose in the books, get your degrees, see the world. Like, those were the messages that I got. And then, similar to other people, you just kind of stumble, bumble, and fumble through life figuring it out. So to be able to have the conversation is very, very important, not only for us now, like if you are Kemetic and you are single, like, well, what should I be looking for? What does our culture say are our norms? But it's also important for young people and young people following behind us because, and I think I mentioned this before in the last time we spoke, where the contemporary Kemetic legacy, as it is right now, it has only been around since the 1970s. So no one who is Kemetic right now, anyways, has really had that kind of leadership or just that conversation of like, this is how we do it. So it's very, very important to me personally to, as the Kemetic did back in the day, leave something for the next generation. Like, it's cool that we take pictures and stuff like that, but like, what do we actually believe and how do we want to raise our kids, teenagers, and the generations that come after us? So it's just like imperative because it's the cornerstone.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And that's a good point that we don't really we weren't really told, what to do and how to date and things of that nature. And we all just, I tell my girls, but I do get a little more in depth, but I tell my girls exactly what you said. Hey, listen, ultimately, they just want one thing. It just depends on what they do in between. It's like people say, it's not the day, it's the day you were born. You die, but it's what happens in that dash that matters. What he does in between that dash, between when you meet him And
Mhm.
when he gets what he ultimately wants is what matters. And that's what should determine whether or not he meets his goals. So, and I just kind of break it down like that. But you mentioned people who are single. So that leads me to my first question. Are you single?
So I am currently single. I would like to say that I am dating. Um, so I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I am.
Gotcha. So with that vague, that definitive but vague answer, we'll move on to the second question. With your spiritual path being paramount, is it important to you that the man in your life be spiritually aligned with you?
So there are some things that, unfortunately, when I say that might sound a little harsh. So please, Menyet got her honey right here. I'm trying to keep my words sweet today. I am not trying to get on anybody, just because I find that a lot of times the conversations about dating and dating advice and all that seems to be very accusatory. So that's not how Minyet is trying to come. I'm just trying to say, well, if it quacks like a duck and it looks like a duck, I mean, it may be a goose, but it's probably a duck. I'm just saying, just throwing it out there. So I live in the New York tri-state area. So there are a lot of people within this area that identify as Kemetic. But sometimes when you go out with potential suitors, they end up not necessarily being as described. Like the ingredients label was a little vague and lacking, and I'll put it like that. So I have come to the conclusion, because I want to say years ago, I'm like, he got to be Kemetic, he got to be vegan, he got to this, he got to that. And now that I am, and I'm not going to say my age, but now that I am the age that I am, I have learned that part of my is that flexibility within dating. So I have actually found that gentlemen callers who identify as spiritual, who just seem to be on that type of openness level, is really what I'm kind of looking for, just because I don't want to say it's unrealistic, but like I said, we've only been around since the 70s and we're very spread out. So it is much more likely that I will meet someone who is not Kemetic versus meeting someone who is, like, to be honest. So the things in general for people who are Kemetic and identify as being Kemetic, I tend to think of like morals, values, mental health, because people don't like to talk about it, but it's very important. People who are responsible in their own finances, who are strong with communication. And I don't mean like necessarily they just talk a lot, but the quality of what it is they're saying, their tone of voice, how they communicate is very important. So yeah, that's generally, I know it's a long answer, but that's what I look for.
Gotcha. And that to me that makes sense because, like you said, it's those who profess to be Kemetic, whether they are, as I say, the full spectrum, or they halfway, or they just teetering, whatever the case may be, it's still the minority. And so you are likely to meet someone who's not under that ideology or philosophy than you are someone who is. So it makes perfect sense. Now, have you found explaining your spirituality to potential suitors or partners difficult?
Honestly, no. Like, for me, you know, a lot of my dating experience has been through online dating, which has its pluses and minuses. But it's one of those things that I definitely put to the top, like, hey, I am I am Afro-Kemetic. This is, what I believe. And I just kind of put it out there straight away. Generally speaking, most of the time, people will say, well, oh, what is that? Or, oh, I'm interested in that. And sometimes they are, and sometimes it's a talking point, and sometimes it's a conversion you're going to hell point. So, um, but I really just try to be honest. Just as I'm getting to know someone, I also try to bring up, like, what is their spiritual tradition? What are things that they believe? How were they raised? And stuff like that, to just kind of get a little better gauge in general. So yeah, I just really want to see, is this a person who is aligned with Ma'at, or are they potentially aesthetic? So that's usually how I look at it.
Got you. And for those who may not be privy, when you say Ma'at and Isfet, what do you describe that for those who may not know?
Okay, so usually the easiest answer is someone who fits into, as Kemetic people or as Kemetiu, we have the 42 Tepra and Ma'at, which are, as other traditions have, like, this is our template for our daily lifelong behavior and what we attain to be. So there are 42 things that you pretty much are supposed to recite in the morning and the evening. Now, clearly, if this person has no context as to what Ma'at is, I'm not sitting there like, you must read the 42. Like, no, nothing like that. But it's the idea of, are they a man or a woman of anger? Do they eavesdrop? Or do they pry into matters to make mischief? Like, I'm looking at the different qualities that are listed in the 42 and saying, is this a person that fits these morals that are pretty much the bedrock of what it means to be Kemetic? Like, these are the things we follow and believe in addition to other stuff too. Whereas Isfet is essentially chaos. Are they a person who is just fly by the seat of their pants? They're maybe they could be immature. Maybe, there are a lot of different ways that could manifest. So essentially, if you look at the 42 and they're not hitting a majority of them, and clearly nobody hits them all the time every day, but they at least, kind of fit as much of the percentage of the 42 as I do, because I'm looking for my equal, not, I could say even someone who's better. If they're closer on the 42, then that gives me something to aspire to.
Okay. That'll work. So I guess I'll move on to my next question. So
Okay.
have you come across someone who you actually wanted to get to know on that level, but your spiritual traditions were too far apart for you to make that connection or allow it to go anywhere?
Okay. So generally speaking, I would say no. And that is mostly because as one of my aunt is 84, and anytime oh my gosh, Aunt Helen this, Aunt Helen that, she's like, don't go there. Like, that is her. If she had a hashtag, that's what it would be. So when it comes to dating, and I see someone say, I identify as Hebrew Israelite, I'm like, ugh. If you feel strongly enough to profess that that's what you believe, and that is the system you are following, then perhaps that might be a point of contention. If you say, like, I have found that people who say I'm Christian, that's one thing, but when they say, like, no, I'm Methodist, like, oh, okay, yeah, you claiming something, so I'm backtrack. Like, yeah, so that's usually what I look for. And if it's in person, like I said, I just try to, like some type of conversation or talking point. I try to keep it light, but just to try to find out like, oh, it's Sunday. What you doing today? What you got on your agenda? Like, and if they're talking about, or if it's Friday, like, oh, I'm going to Menyet or something, like, okay, have a good one. Like, we could be cool, but I already know it's like, don't go there.
Right.
So
that makes sense.
I was actually, it just popped in my head. I'm like, actually, I have had more of the moments where I kind of had to cut it off with people who were Kemetic or conscious than I have not, which is interesting. Like I remember it was this one gentleman caller back in the day, and I consider myself to be conservative. If you identify as a Kemetic, we are a conservative group. Like, don't let anybody get it twisted. Like, it's cool to be liberal about some stuff because we're in 2021. We got to update some things, but generally speaking, we're conservative. So I consider myself to be conservative. And he asked me out, and I'm like, oh, okay, let's meet. Okay, cool. And then the second date, and we're getting along, and that's fine. And then towards the middle of it, he fixed his mouth and was like, so when are you going to pay for a date? And I'm like, oh, that tells me everything I need to know. Yeah. And it's not the idea of being willing to pay, because that was not the issue. It's the fact that you're being bold enough on date 2. Right. Like, you're not even going to play it cool. You're not going to, a couple of times, because eventually, yes, I want to show like I can pull my weight. I can reciprocate, because again, we're about my aunt. And let's just say that was the last time that we went out together. And that was interesting unto itself. Another time I went out with, someone different, and we had been kind of like flirting, crushing for a while, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so cute. You get those little butterflies and stuff. And it's something casual. So, especially now that I'm a little older, I'm like, oh, okay, something casual, that's cool. And and I'm like, I feel bad because I'm like, we're still kind of friends. So I'm not trying to blow up nobody's spot, but it's just like, it was always, oh, can we meet now? Can we, like, oh, I'm free now? And, like that kind of thing. And it's just like, so it doesn't really seem like you're really trying to get to know each other and date. It's like, you just want to hurry up, hook up type of thing. But I'm like, all right, you have an interesting schedule. Cool. Let's get together. Let's see what happens. Go out. I'm not even going to say what the rest of that experience was like, but it was a lot of listening to this person talk about themselves, talk about their prowess with other women.
Did you go on a date with Shaka almost?
Don't do that.
I retract that question. Never mind.
No, it was not him. It was not him.
Just
Lord have mercy. I'm like, I'm gonna just close that box and we're gonna just put that over there.
That's my man. I love Shaka. Just for the record, I love Shaka, but I had to do it. I had to do it. You set it up. Exactly, you set it up too nice for me.
You was like, alley. So yeah, the night ended, still kind of flirtatious, but it was just like, it was just lacking because, and then the key thing I heard was, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but then he said something along the lines of, I don't believe that men should be with one woman. And I was like, Why the hell did you take me out here sitting until almost 1 a.m., told me all this other stuff, and only to find out that you're not even really trying to have a relationship. You trying to pollinate the field, as they say, which that's cool. I kind of wish I knew that before I even bothered coming out the house, though. So, so yeah, the Conscious Brothers, they're an interesting group of fellows.
We be tripping sometimes. It's all good.
And I want to say, I know not all guys are like that. I know that. I'm just saying, wow. That's all.
Understood. Let me real quick. So shout out to my brother Black Lion Supreme in the chat. You know Shaka, my man. So don't beat me up next time you see me, Black Lion. But so let me throw this curveball at you, because this wasn't the plan. But
all right, let me wind it up. Okay.
So
right.
We got a brother by the name of Kevin Samuels who make a lot of content telling women what they need to do to acquire a high value man, and telling men how to become high value men. I don't particularly care for his approach. Not to say that everything he say is incorrect or correct. I'm not the person to say that. I just don't like his approach to how it seems to be denigrating a lot of our sisters, even though they putting themselves through it. But what's your take on the number of men we see going to this brother to emulate this particular approach, and the number of women that actually go to him and put themselves through this scrutiny?
So I have to be honest. I have not had the pleasure of enjoying a full Kevin Samuels video. I've heard about it. I've heard through the grapevine. I tried to watch one, and just wow, if that's how we wish to be spoken to get advice on our lives, like that, oh wow, just on a whole nother level, just the way people speak to each other on there. But like you said, it's interesting that the one video I did watch, where I literally had to stop watching because of the woman who was in the video. I was just like, oh, rip my skin off. Why? Why did you even call in? No. It's interesting. Even in summer school a couple weeks ago, some of the students brought it up, and they'd be like, he's telling the truth though. And I'm not gonna lie and say he doesn't have something to what he's saying. But it just seems that it's so ego driven that it's missing the mark. Like, a lot of the women are missing the mark. The guys are missing the mark. Like, I feel like if we were to try to be objective of the stuff he was saying, it makes sense, dating on one's level. And that's something I kind of, want to get into a little later. Like, dating on one's level is very, very important, especially to Kemetic people. But you don't kick a woman in the face and be like, get on my level. And you don't kick a man in the face and say, you're beneath me. What do you bring? It's this very interesting conversation of like, well, what do you bring to the table? Well, what do you bring to the table? Well, what do you bring to the table? It's childish. It's very, very childish. And like, I even know of someone who identifies as a follower of Kevin Samuels, and this person is supposed to be Kemetic, and I'm just like, how? Like, they would literally take his word and his philosophy as gospel over like Kemetic maxims and stuff like that, and it's just like we're in a sad state of affairs.
Wow.
We're in such a sad state of affairs if that what he's saying is more important, because he's a Christian. He's not even Kemetic. He's a Christian person. And again, I don't know, like I said, I've never really entertained or watched or anything like that. But, and the way he speaks is just aesthetic. You know, just like how I tease and I say, like, you know, there are certain channels on YouTube that are pretty much like conscious battle rap. Like that's relationship battle rap where, you know, if you ever watch battle rap, like you get in people's faces, you cussing and spitting and calling names and I'm a this and I'm a that. And besides being very from the Abrahamic way of looking at things, which is totally different from how we look at things as far as relationships go, like the fact that it's very American. And it's just like, usually when people say, oh, I'm Kemetic, they frown on Western ways of doing things and frown on doing things the Abrahamic way. Like that's why they left those systems. So to now turn around and be like, well, that's the paramount. Like, nah, if you Kemetic, no, absolutely not. Just it's unfortunate that that's where we are.
That's surprising. That, and I'm assuming that this is a male.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's yeah. I'm shocked because that's the brother is just, he is very disrespectful. I just don't like the sisters who endure that. I'm like, man, and it's crazy because I've seen videos where this dude is like, you see, he got some styling advice,
Mm-hmm.
and started to get his hair cut correctly and got his beard looking decent, because he got videos like, bro, you busted. And you reviewing colognes. I'm questioning your sexual preference. Not that it's anything wrong. I'm not judging nobody, but I'm questioning it. And now all of a sudden, 2 years later, you giving advice to me? Like and he still got these videos up. And I'm like, man, who is the person that gave him his styling advice and start cutting his hair? Because they are marketing geniuses. Because how people started taking this man advice is a mystery to me. But yeah, I just had to get some input from you on that, because it's crazy. It's like you said, it's sad that we feel like we so lowly that this individual is who we taking life advice. Because ultimately, the person you want to spend time with, that's life advice, and this is who we taking it from.
And there's and I have to say, you know, just to be fair, just to be Ma'adik, there are equally toxic females out there giving horrible advice. Like I'm telling you, like I have a friend and I'm like, she gonna be low-key kind of mad. I love her to death, but some of the dating advice that she just be like, watch this video. I forget what the woman's name is, but it's something mermaid on Instagram. And it's like this version of womanhood that's like, nah, I can't follow that. Like, you are the apple of his eye, so he should be giving you money for this and that and this and that. I'm just like, I mean, the ACM is owned by Wells Fargo. Like, I don't really have to, like, that's not within that's not my realm. So, but again, I understand where it comes from. So I see Black Lion Supreme said it's the Black woman hurt me syndrome. And that is so true. It's not even, it's the Black woman hurt me syndrome on both sides. It's the Black man hurt me on both sides. Like, we are so used to being in abusive and traumatic situations that has now become the norm for our relationships. And it's just scary that now it's to the point that it's so normalized that, like, that's what we're aiming for in the way we speak, in the way we interact. It's just, yes, it's madness.
Yeah, yes, this is madness. Peace to my brother Nobody from Trust and Believe the Gospel in the chat. So I guess I'm gonna take it to my last question, and then at that point, I'm really gonna kind of let you take over the show, so to speak.
I'm like, okay.
So now, how has your journey into Kemetic spirituality influenced your dating life?
Okay. So, as I said earlier, growing up, I really didn't get any dating advice. Like, my mom's a boomer, my dad's a boomer, all of them are boomers. So, we understand that there are differences in generation, and, there are certain things that, I understand now as an adult. My mom was not equipped to even have that conversation because she never got that conversation. She never really dated. And then, like, my father was her first and her last. So she has no, like, she tries her best, but a lot of it comes from what she sees in the media, what family members have been through, so on and so forth. So, um, and even still, just as a young person, I was listening to my bonehead friends. I was looking at movies and watching TV and like, oh my God, my Prince Charming. Like, these were the things that I kind of grew up with. So my journey into being a Kemetic woman totally just made me think about the things that just weren't there. They just weren't there, and it's nobody's fault, but it's just, again, this idea that the Kemetic legacy has only been around since the 70s, and then before that, between the what was it, the crack epidemic, and with welfare and not being able to have the father in the home, and like, we had all these things breaking down family for so long, and in my family personally, my mother's mother died in childbirth. So she was raised by her father. So, her whole, you know what I mean? Like, it was very, very different.
It's different, yeah.
Very, very different. So, and I even throw this question out to everybody else. Like, if you want to just say thumbs up or yes or something like that, like, was your experience as far as getting messages about dating kind of similar, where it's just stay away from boys, stay away from girls, keep your nose in the books, like watching and getting ideas from TV? Like, did anyone have a different experience? That's what I would like to know. Like, or is that the norm, essentially?
I think it's pretty much the norm, because like my mother, she didn't even talk to me about dating. Mm-hmm. So I saw older family members who had been in relationships since before I was born. Like, I had my aunt she's been with my uncle literally since I'll be 45 in October. They've been together since like a couple of years before I was born. So I saw that, and then other relationships, and so I'm patterning things after that, because my mother and father had a tumultuous type of relationship. Mm-hmm. And I have a brother that's a year younger than me, but he's my stepmother's son, and we both born in the same month. Just to give you an idea of how my father was wrong. But my father told me this, and it's funny. His mentality was, you get you a nice girl that you're gonna build your life with, have kids with, who you love, but you keep several women who you enjoy spending time with over here. And he said this to me at 14, 15 years old. So that was my mentality. Like, and I didn't see anything. I thought, this is my father telling me this. I don't think nothing wrong with it. Mm-hmm. And as long as I treated her well, or as well as I could, and let her know I cared and I loved her, whatever the case may be, mm-hmm. no matter what I did with these other females, as long as they knew where the line of demarcation was. And the funny thing is, my father is 63, and he still has that mentality. Now, I wouldn't dare teach my son that mentality, because it caused me a lot of personal problems, as you can imagine, because I told you I've been married since I was 20 years old.
Mhm.
And having a particular immature mind state and not understanding that this is not how things work, I still carried that mentality over into my young adult married life. And so I wouldn't pass that thinking on to my son, but my father is in his early 60s and
Mm.
still has that mentality. And he loves my wife as if she was his blood daughter. And I'm proud of you. You don't you don't act like me anymore, but you still act like you. It's the craziest thing. So everybody had these little, but in his defense, his father wasn't around. His uncle taught him that
Mm.
mentality, and he can't. So it's hard to shake. And so while he's happy, I don't display that behavior. It's part and parcel to who he is at this point. I don't know if it'll ever change.
Mm. And I think about that because I'm like, now I'm starting to jump around because of, like, you just put sparked a thought in my mind where like that kind of mentality, a lot of guys will say, and I've heard this from more than one person, where it's just like, oh, well, guys are just not meant to be monogamous. Guys are just like, we're meant to pollinate, we're meant to this, we're meant to that, science, yada, yada. Like, they use all different kinds of stuff. And I want to say recently, I have come to the revelation that literally every man in my life that I know has cheated. Every single one.
Don't lose that thought, Queen. I just want to shout out my queen, Jamila Griffin, in the chat. I love you. 24 years of marriage on August 9th. Salute. Go ahead, Queen.
Yes, it was foolishness, straight foolishness. And to kind of fast forward a little bit to like some of the things that I wanted to get to, or some of the other points, is this idea that, again, we say as Kemetic people, like, oh, the West is horrible, it's bad. Oh, the Abrahamic thing, oh, that's bad. We need to go back to tradition. But yet that kind of thinking is Western thinking because, unfortunately, your manhood or masculinity is measured by how many women, how much money, and so on and so forth. Whereas, like, if you're a Kemetic man, that is not the measure. So if we're not differentiating through, like, that is the old way of doing things, that is, I understand that was where our parents were, that was their understanding, so on and so forth. But for us to continue that at this point is just not only is phatic, but it's careless, irresponsible, and it's going to continue. Like, we want to say, oh, we need to heal from generational traumas, we need to this, but if we're still giving certain type of advice with a certain kind of mindset, it's not going to go away. And now your children are going to feel that pain that you experienced. They're going to feel the pain that you put somebody else through. So it's just, we really have to take stock as to, what we really believe and what's important when it comes to relationships. So that I'm like looking at my notes back and forth. So one of the things, or one of the main points I wanted to make, is the ancient Kemetic believed that marriage was the cornerstone of their society. So, like, it was incredibly important. Whereas, I feel like in 2020, it's just a social status. Like, to quote it, the great Color Purple, I was married now. Like, people just want to be married. And I'm not going to lie, that was me for a very long time, because, again, I grew up in this society. So it's kind of like, you're such and such years old, hurry up and go get married. You're such and such years old, hurry up and go do this, without thinking like, well, what is its function? What is its purpose? And what am I going to do once I get there? Like, what's the purpose of getting married? And I have to be honest, like my ex even told me that, what's that point of being married, or what's the point of getting married if you don't understand what marriage actually is? So it was just like, hindsight, I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Like that, it's a very poignant question that we really need to think about. But the Commit to You had a whole, system. And, I encourage us to look at that system. So generally speaking, courtship back in ancient Kemet was, you meet somebody, you vibe with them, and I'm not talking about like sexually or nothing like that. Although, we're not gonna lie here, that's something that is, part of the mix that's important within a relationship.
Very important.
I'm glad you leaned in like very. I got the whole forehead for that one. Exactly. So, but it wasn't necessarily about love. Like, love wasn't the first thing. The idea of courtship was, is this a person I can build a foundation with? Is this a person I can have kids with? Is this a person I could build legacy with? Because again, the function of eventually of this courtship eventually would be to get married. And if that is the cornerstone of whole of society, we need to find someone who we can actually be married, not just flash a ring and have a cute car and then parade our children around like they're circus animals. Because let's be real, some people do that. Like, that's why they get married, because they want that status versus, and it ends up damaging the kids, the family, like that's where we messing up at. So there were arranged marriages back in the day. And people would be getting married as young as 12, 13, so on and so forth. Now, I'm not saying in 2021 we need to, engage in that, update it kind of a thing. But I think matchmaking is something that, could be thought of, as well as just in general looking at, that legacy. But I'm gonna get to that in a moment. So in addition to courtship, there were very specific gender roles. And I know that's something that's very important in 2021. People are just like, oh, I'm gender fluid, I'm this, I'm that, and the third. And, a lot of people are just kind of, going in many different directions. So if we're talking about the Kemetic direction, we have our classic gender roles are a masculinity is defined as having a profession, AKA having income. And when we say that, I'm going to just say legal income, not just hustling, not just, that kind of thing. But like, again, that's your status. That's who you are in the world. So having your profession, they would call it establishing a home. That is getting married. And 3, not only having children and siring children, but formally educating your own children. So like, I have a friend of mine where her husband is just like, we need to have more kids, we need to have more kids, we need to have more kids, blah, 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 like that, populate the earth type of a thing. But he has no relationship, or very like limited relationship, with his children who are here already. So it's just like, again, are you parading your children around as status and like, oh, I'm a man because I give money to beings that don't even know me as a human being? Like, how is that really family then? And even Ptah says, wise is he who finds himself a house and loves his wife. So again, finding himself a house is getting married and loving your wife. And again, since love wasn't the first thing, the idea of establishing a home is that love would eventually come. Like it takes time to develop and stuff like that. It's not just I love them and then you do all the other stuff. It's kind of like out of order the way we kind of do it now. So to get to the other side, femininity, getting married, being a good wife. So again, you're following the 42. You're making sure like this was something that I had to even recognize within myself, that what does it mean to keep a good home? So, and one of the things that I had been taught was to be a Kemetic woman means that your home is kept immaculately, not subpar, not this, not that. And that's not to be like, stay in that kitchen and bear children. It's not like that, but that is your pride. That is your space. And not only is that your space, that is your children's space. That is your husband's space. That is, that is y'all's family foundational space. And that's important. So being married, being a good wife, again, you stick into those 42, you trying to kind of perfect yourself as much as you can. Excuse me. And in general, having children, and not just popping out kids, but in general, having kids, but making sure they're upstanding citizens. So not passing them off so that you can go out dancing with your girls, not passing them out while you in Pathmark, not, none of that kind of stuff, because again, everything you speak into that child, everything you speak into that husband, they give back to you. So one of the things I've come to realize so much recently is how much women have trouble with other women because of their mothers, because they look at their daughters as competition. They look at their daughters as, oh, she's moving fast. She's this, she's that. Well, where is she getting it from? Where were you? Where, you know what I mean? So it's like, that's it's very important. The next thing is your beauty and your health. Now that doesn't mean you got to be a fashionista and being superficial. But again, if your home is clean, you should be clean. Keeping yourself well kept. And this isn't to say that men shouldn't be doing that either. Where a lot of times people say, oh, well, after you get married, they let themselves go. And, so staying on top of that, because eventually those kids are going to leave and you're going to be staring at your mate in the face. And if neither one of you like what you see, and that wasn't what y'all, fell in love with, like, well, we raised the kids, now what? And then you see people getting divorced after the kids leave, or they stayed in it for the kids, kind of a thing. So it's just like, well, again, what is that teaching again for this next generation? Well, stay for the kids, even though you're unhappy, so it's just like, get out, and then they'll raise their kids like that. So again, we want to just be very careful about how we upkeep ourselves. And it's hard, especially after becoming a mom, having your own time, having, unfortunately, as part of our society, because this is America. And I've seen a couple of videos recently on TikTok where a woman goes out and her husband is watching the baby, and the baby is screaming and crying. And he was like, oh, she's here to save you. She's here to save you, kind of a thing. And the woman is just like, it cuts. And the commentary is that, well, as a husband, if I can't leave this child with you and you handle it just so I can take a shower, just so I can, not punch somebody in the face, because let's be real, having kids, they know how to push all the buttons. Like, you need that quiet time, just like the husband needs a quiet time. But if you can't be trusted, or you constantly are doing chores wrong, or you're constantly not pulling your weight, it's gonna cause issues in that relationship. So on each side, you gotta keep yourself up. You gotta, in general, pull that mental, physical, all of that together, and keep your health. Because again, I'm not gonna lie, y'all gentlemen don't like to be going to the doctor, and that's it's irresponsible because now you got the kids worrying about you, you got the wife worrying about you, got all this stuff. And I'm not even saying you have to go to a Western medical doctor, at least go to the holistic doctor. At least do your seasonal cleanses, at least stay on top of your own health in some way, shape, or form. And then finally, the last thing, and I know I'm like going back and forth, but for femininity is your professional work. Just because you like those are your points of focus as a woman doesn't mean that you can't have a job, doesn't mean you gotta just pick up after people for the rest of your life. Like, no, Kemetic women back in the day, they were medical professionals, they were food vendors, they were farmers, they were entertainers. That like Kemet is known for being one of the most, and granted by 2021 standards, we would be like, nah, that's sexist, or nah, that's, too much. But in the ancient worlds, it was like mind blowing how much women did and were responsible for compared to other ancient societies. So, women of higher status, because of their husbands, were allowed to be part of the actual royal court. They were allowed to be priestesses. They were allowed to maintain tomb offerings. They were allowed to call the seal bearer. So they had important positions in addition to their home stuff. So let's not, I don't want us to get it like, oh, like I gotta be barefooted pregnant. Like, no, absolutely not. There was no separation between women. It wasn't like go off into a corner type of a thing. As a woman, and I know other faiths say to be the helpmate, like, no, you really are the helpmate. You are each other's helpmate, because whatever, if the man is doing this, you're right there with them. If you and they say, especially like, look at ancient figures, go to the museums, look at the artwork. The man and the woman, the netter and the netrette, they're always together. The arm is around, the children are there. Like it's always present of that duality. So there is no subordination. There is no get in that kitchen and give me my meal, or what do you bring to the table? All you could do is cook and pop it open kind of a thing, or bust it open. Like, no. That's not what we do over here in Kemet. Maybe that's y'all Abrahamic stuff, but that's not us over here. So just to, again, be fair, like this wasn't like a paradise, like, oh my God, ancient Kemet was just so great, like hot chill.
It was Wakanda.
It was, oh Lord have mercy, no. There was still, like, respectfully, there was still slavery, there was still like taxation, there was still extreme classism, there was all that stuff back then too. So it wasn't like just some paradise. So women were excluded from certain things, usually physical jobs. The one thing I found in my research that was pretty funny is like women were not allowed to do laundry. Like that was a man's job to go do the laundry, which I just was like, really? But it makes sense, because if you're washing the laundry out in the Nile, a hippopotamus or a crocodile gonna come get you. So that was a man's thing. Men had to go do that. So, but in general, the idea is that when it comes to gender roles, oftentimes we think of gender roles in the 2021 sense of like patriarchy and misogyny and things like that. And that's not necessarily the way it was. It's just, you do this, I do that. It's not better, it's not worse. It's just, this is what needs to be done. And I've even said this in my classes before, where it's like, well, where do you think this even came from? If a woman is bearing children, how is she going to go hunt when that baby needs to eat every few hours? How is she, and I was watching one documentary, and it was just like the process of making bread. And bread was like the main food staple of ancient Kemet. it was like an almost all day process. But because, you know, you got to build the fire. Then after you build the fire, you got to mix it. Then you got to let it lift. Then you, I'm saying the wrong terminology. And I love to bake too. That's like the worst thing, that I forget that. But you let it rise, and then you put it in, and then you got to turn it. And then, you know, so by the time you make enough bread, because it was like pita bread size for your family, half the day is gone. So it's like, you know, yay, women empowerment, but it's just the idea of back then, it took way longer to get certain stuff done. So it would just make sense. Well, okay, if we're having kids, or grandma's going senile and you're going to watch her, kind of a thing, like, you know, these are the things that can get done in this sphere, and these are the things that can get done in this sphere. And it doesn't make it better or worse, kind of a thing. So I have 3 words. These are all out of the Vigus dictionary. So for anybody who, you know, people want to be like, oh, there was no such thing as marriage. Marriage is a white man's concept. Oh, I don't need that white man's piece of paper. Like, no. In ancient Kemet, like, we had vocabulary for that. So let's not do the trickery. So Smayit. Again, if you're looking on the Vigus dictionary, it's on page 464. That is your marriage contract. Oh, Lord, I'm going to butcher this one. I should have practiced this one. Shame on me.
Take your time. Take your time.
So, Ahkh, so that is wedding or to contract a marriage. That's page 605. And then Heb, so that is festival, wedding, or holiday. And that is on page 2011, 2012, 2038, 2059, and 2109. So that was not something that we did not do. Like, let's be clear, like, nah, that's a lie. Whoever telling you that, they lying. So in general, after the whole, you know, hey, I like you, you like me, what are you about? What are you trying to do? Then the couple comes together and they be like, hey, fam, we want to get married. And the family would have to approve it. Just like nowadays, like if your daddy knows that he ain't worth a pound of nothing, he gonna be like, nah. If your mother, same thing. Parents see stuff that, you know, you may not see. So even if you don't have a good relationship with your parents, if you have an aunt or an uncle, not one that's telling you to keep people on the side, but if you got like somebody who's trusted, who you look up to as far as like, you know, where it is you're trying to go, you know, they look over and say yes or no. So back in the day, and I really wish I could remember the name of this, but there's like a specific archaeological spot in Kemet, and it's like one of the places where they find most of the evidence for like everyday people and what their life was like. And as part of the fragments there, and they put together that this guy was like, he was writing, I don't want to say poetry, but he was writing, saying like how distraught he was because he got rejected so many times and he wanted to marry this woman. And she pretty much said no. The fam said no twice. Like, he was just so hurt. And they literally said, like, you, as we say today, he didn't bring nothing to the table.
Wow.
Nah, you're not good enough. You got to stay away. And these were everyday people. So, after that was announced and the parents and everybody approved, they came together and they made that smayit, that marriage contract. And the contract was transferring property, made them both financially obligated to one another. So again, it's not just being a baby maker, but again, you know, the woman is bringing this property, the man is bringing this property, and this is how it's going to go. So again, you see, it's not about love. The love comes later, kind of a thing. But again, it's, like I said, shout out to the people who say it's just a Western thing and I don't want to sign that. It's a business. Like, nah, it was a business back then too. Let's not do that. So the marriage contract also affirmed fairness between men and women. It expressed the rights of both parties. It ensured if they wanted employment, or it said like, okay, you're going to do this job, I'm going to do this job, I'm going to do this, you're going to do that, blah, blah, blah. So, and if by chance they were not able to have children, the man could legally make her his child. And this isn't like in a bad type of a way, but you know, you usually pass things down to your children, like especially back then. So you would make the wife like, okay, we ain't got no kids, so if I, you know, kick the bucket, as my mom would say, you're leaving everything to her. And that would be stipulated within the contract. If you did have children, you could also put her in there, because I did hear somebody else say, oh, well, you know, he put his wife in as his child and this, that, and the third, that the wife was permitted 66% or approximately 66% of the total, and then everything else is divided amongst the kids. And then I also saw one part that said that property, especially from the grandfather, would be passed down to the daughter's son, or if there was, you know, that wasn't the situation, it would be like his sister's first son, because again, the lineage was through the woman. And I mean, you know, they didn't have DNA testing back then. Like that was the way to understand, like, okay, this is definitely our family, because the woman, you know, there's evidence that she had the kid, whereas there might be some questionability about the dude. So, you know, it just kind of always went that way. So as part of the marriage contract, there was what they called the year of eating. So newlyweds, that was your first year of marriage. And it was considered the probationary period of the marriage. So if you changed your mind, you could just be like, yeah, you was cool, but, and you pay it, you know, you pay a certain amount of money and you got the marriage annulled and peace out. And that's it. There was no social stigma for being divorced. There was no social stigma for not being a virgin or anything like that. Like that didn't exist. That's super Abrahamic stuff. We don't, that's not us. So I know this one is going to be a topic for some folks that might be a little touchy.
Uh-oh. Go ahead.
Polygamy. So back in ancient Kemet, yes, polygamy did exist.
Uh-oh.
It is, you know, I mean, it's clear as day, the necessity, you know, like it was there. However, I'm just saying, because I know some people are gonna hear just that part and like run out the window with it. It's like, whoa, come back. So it was legal. It was practiced by the aristocracy, the wealthy. It was not the everyday regular schmegular dude.
We ain't got enough money, brothers.
Yeah, like it is not for you. Sorry, not sorry. And then the thing that was also part of that is you paid maintenance to the wife. So a lot of guys didn't want to have to pay maintenance to multiple people, because then you're going to lose your money. So that's, you know, something that made it so that it really was for the wealthy. That was not everyday people stuff. So it was very, very rare. Like if you look archaeologically, it's very rare to find evidence of more than one wife outside of the aristocracy. Every now and then you'll see it. But again, the thought at the time was polygamy was for political ties. So, you know, you get this wife from over here, and now that nation and your nation have an agreement. You're a politician. You're making agreements like that. The next is if your wife was not able to have children. Now, granted, back then it could have been the dude. You know, like it's possible infertility isn't just a female thing; it's a male thing too. But it was allowed to, again, procreate, because what's the foundation is a family. So you wanted to have children, and especially with high death rates, you wanted as many children as possible. So having another wife to ensure children was part of that reasons for polygamy. And then the last reason was a widow. If a woman was a widow, let's say her husband died, he went off to war, someone who was of means would take her on as another wife because, you know, just socially to kind of, again, it's all about the family and keeping the society together versus, you know, just kind of leaving them out there. And there are plenty of maxims, like if you see a widower in the field, do not take advantage of her. And that's out of the Hosea. I forget what page off the top of my head, but it's frowned upon. Let's put it that way. So oftentimes, and we see this with other traditions, if your, like, let's say sister-in-law and it was your brother who died, you would take her on because, again, that's already your family. I'm pretty sure they're not knocking boots. Maybe they are. Who knows? You know, people do all kinds of things. But again, the function of it was not about relations. It was about, you know, that foundation, establishing your legacy, keeping your legacy together. And a lot of the guys I hear nowadays, they are not talking about that. A lot of the reason for polygamy is because, well, I got the money, I could do it.
Right.
I have a penis and I need to have a place to put it. Like, you know, it's that kind of behavior. And it's just like, I mean, if you want to go back to high school, because again, you're abiding by the Abrahamic and the Western way of, to be a man, I have to have all these women. Like, you know, this is everyday life. This isn't a drill rap song kind of a thing. Like, because that's what music and that's what society says is supposed to be important. But if we are Kemetic people, we not going that way.
Right.
So the next area is divorce. It existed. It was common. Just like we have high divorce rates, they had high divorce rates.
Wow.
It was loud. So again, divorce, so it's called the Wdja, and I'm not sure if I'm saying it quite correctly, so don't you know, get on me. I'm still learning. So that's Vigus page 640. That is divorce by judgment. It could also mean a divorced woman. So that's page 640 and 821. And then you have nis, which is put away, disown, specifically like a spouse, expel from, divorce, drive apart from a husband and wife. So again, it's within the language. It is definitely something that existed. It was totally allowed. You didn't have to just be a guy like other traditions, like only the man could. Nope. If a woman wanted divorce, divorce. If a man wanted divorce, divorce. The only thing, before I even say that, if you just wanted to marry somebody else, that was okay. If you just wasn't jiving with each other anymore, like it was considered like permissible. There were no like, you till death do you part forever. Like, again, and I think I said this the last time, where in Kemet, we're all about ma'at. We understand that everything ain't gonna be peachy keen forever and ever, amen. Like, life happens. So divorce can sometimes happen. Like, you know, how many, like, there were still abusive relationships back then. There was still, all of these things existed back then as they do now. So why are you gonna, you know, my wife abuses me and she talks horribly to me and she pushes all the triggers every day, but I'm gonna stick around for the kids. Like, nah, you gotta show them kids that that's not okay. So, and in addition to this, and adultery was a thing, you know, and unfortunately, I'm sorry to break up the Wakanda vision. If a man cheated, a woman could divorce him, and she would get back her assets. Like, so whatever she brought into the marriage, she could take it back. He didn't get to keep it. And in general, now granted, there are texts and there is evidence that if the woman cheated, she could be straight up killed. And that is bad. So, and again, the point is, if you are the mother of the children and you are that bedrock, if you're stepping out and that, if pregnancy happens, then it ruins the legitimacy of that legacy. Because, well, if you stepped out, whose kids are these? And, it just brings up a whole lot of stuff. So in function, it makes sense. It sucks because it's not fair in our 2021 mind. And I totally get that. Because it was common, especially like a guy. If a guy cheated with a married woman, he was getting publicly beat. If the authorities had to get involved and put her on trial, she could face the death penalty. Again, it depends on what time period you're in and how much that happened or didn't happen. But even if the woman did cheat, and this is like, I know in nowadays people are like, I don't want to pay no alimony, I don't want to pay no child support, and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's the thing. Don't you all worry. I got y'all. I got statistics. It's coming. But the woman is still allowed 1/3 of the assets. Now, granted, this is also because part of it would go to the kids and this, that, and third. But the wife, even if she cheated, was allowed 1/3 of the marital assets after divorce.
Give me 1 second, Queen. I just want to point out, I don't know if y'all peeped this. She didn't say if a man abused a woman, which is what we typically hear about. She said if a man was getting abused. So I gotta drop another bomb real quick, because we don't talk about how these men be getting beat up and yelled at and denigrated by these sisters, but they do. Shout out to those brothers who take that beating. Also, when you talk about the women that could get killed for committing adultery, and I'm spitballing because I'm thinking in modern times. Did the fact that they could leave with those assets have anything to do with the fact that they sometimes were killed, or was that just part of the process?
No, it was part of the process.
Okay.
Just in general, but there was one. Oh gosh, I can't remember where it was from. I would have to relook it up. But it was a what do you call that? Like a official document, and it was this person who was, of the aristocracy, and he was messing around with not one but 2 married women, and that's why I said he was publicly beat and shamed. Oh, I forgot the other thing. If she didn't get killed, she could get her nose cut off. Wow. So as a symbol, nah, don't stay away kind of a thing. So you could incur bodily harm, but again, how can I say it? The bodily fetters, try to stay away from that.
And I just want to say, I in a society where if a man, because my queen is what's most precious to me, and if another man, affected how precious I see her, a public beating, short of me doing worse, I'll take that public beating. So I'm not mad. I gotta drop a bomb for the ancient Kemetic civilization real quick, because I think that would be satisfying to most men to watch that individual get that public beating. I'm just saying. But go ahead, Queen.
Yeah, that it is something else. And I mean, I get it. I understand, but men cheat and they do this and they do that. How come women get treated this way versus that way? And again, it's not like if a guy cheated, he would be blameless. There were still consequences. There's still ma'at. It's just, again, because the foundation of society is considered to be marriage and children, that is why it was more extreme for the women. But it doesn't mean it's worse when a woman does it, because we hear that a lot. And that's, it's worse when it happens, period.
Right.
I can say just in my life, I have been cheated on many times, and I feel bad that I said it that way. Like that was not a bad job.
I just made me sad. I'm like, huh?
No. It's life. It's life. It happens. But it hurts. It hurt. You know, like I said, the guys. Oh, you know, and I understand that, but it hurts both ways, and it rip your soul out. Lay on the couch, can't go to work for a couple of weeks. Hurts really bad. It makes you rethink all of life. Like, you know, I even said lately, I see why hot girl summer, and I see why women act the way they do. I don't agree with it. I don't say that's what we should be doing. Absolutely not. But I see how things denigrate it. And like, again, we're beating each other up so bad. It's like a race to how bad we could traumatize and abuse each other. And it's like, we definitely, we got to stop that ASAP. So part of, just as I was kind of like getting my research together, I'm like, okay, well, you know, well, what does that look like? Like, okay, this is how the Kemetic did it. This is how it was in ancient times. But, you know, we've had the civil rights movement. We've had the women's liberation movement. We have it where in 2021, to live on a single income just for a single person is difficult. So, you know, and to get back to what you were saying about like Kevin Samuels and even polygamy, it's like I have seen, not with him, but in other situations where so many guys say, I want a stay-at-home wife. I don't want her to go out. I want her to stay home. I want her to be domestic. And a lot of women wouldn't have a problem with that. I'm not saying all women, but there are a good amount of women who are cool with that. But you have to have your T's crossed and your I's dotted. You know what I'm saying? And like just how expensive it is and our income as a group of people, it's like, it's one of those things we just don't want to talk about. Like, respectfully, we understand, you know, Western society treats Black men a certain way. It limits opportunities. It limits earning potential. And it does for Black women too. But is it realistic? And I put that out there. Is it realistic? Unless you're literally living in Mississippi, which has the lowest cost of living in the whole United States. Unless you're living in Mississippi, it's really, really expensive to live. So the average American household spends $5,005 a month just for basic living expenses. That's $60 per year. I don't know about y'all, and I'm gonna get to it in a couple of minutes, but there's a lot of people in our community who is not making $60. The median mortgage is $1,609. And if that's your mortgage, your home ownership, so fixing the bathroom, you know, getting the chimney fixed or whatever it is, $13,153 on top of your mortgage. If you're renting, the average rent is $1,192 in 2021. Now for New Jersey and the tri-state area, we wish we could be paying that. So the rest of the country, we kind of jealous of y'all. Household food, $6,602. 3,000, actually almost 4,000 of that is just eating at home, buying groceries. Almost 3,000 of that is eating out. Clothing between $1,932 and $3,400. Transportation, almost $10,000. Healthcare, almost $11,000. The statistic is for raising a child as of 2021, that's not including inflation or potential inflation, raising one child from 0 to 18 is almost $300,000. And that includes like housing, food, childcare, education, all of that stuff. Like that figure includes that. So let's look at our income. So I'm not trying to be a downer or anything like that. But I mean, if y'all want to put it in the chat, or if you want to give me your opinion, like,
you're just keeping it real. Yeah, it is what it is.
okay. So in 2019, and this is just, I try to keep the statistics generally, around now. So as of 2019, the average U.S. income is $68,703. So if it's $68,000, but the yearly household spending is $60,000, that means you got $8,000 for non-essential things: saving, investing, starting a business, going on vacations, sending your children to gymnastics camp, basketball camp, science camp, whatever, singing lessons, dancing lessons, like $8,000. And then, so if we wanted to break that down, African-American women's income, so just women alone, is approximately, and again, this is the average, is $746 a week, which is approximately $41,098. If we wanted to expand that to lifetime earnings, a Black woman's lifetime earning would be $5.46 million. I should have given like other statistics, like Asian folks are out here winning. They make more money than white folks do. Like they make, I think, $1.25 more than white people do. I think Black men are at 98 cents to the dollar, and Black women are at 86 or 84 cents to the dollar. So Black men, that's $877. Now, mind you, for the woman, it's $746. The man is $877. That's not that far off. That gives a lifetime earning, because I just see I messed up my calculation, and I copied the woman's number by accident, so my bad, y'all. But the lifetime earning for a man is $5.51 million. So it's maybe $10,000 off from each other. If we want to look at lower income, because like, let's be real, everyone isn't in the middle. Lower income for women is about $21,700. Lower income wages for men is $23,738. So like, I even saw one statistic that said for Black men in white collar positions, average was $78,000. So that is middle class, but still the yearly expenditures are still $60,000. So who is raising a family with just that one income? Whether it be just the woman by herself, whether it be just the guy providing for the whole family, like it's just terribly unrealistic in 2021 to say, I want a stay-at-home mom. Can it be done? Yes, but it will be done with sacrifice. It will be done with, can you truly offer your wife, like, you know what? Go out and relax. I got you. How often can you do that? How often can you, because in the Hosea, it says, and I forget which person actually says it. For some reason, I feel like it's Ankh, but I'm not sure. But he says, like, when it comes to your wife, you bathe her in oil, you put food in her belly. Like, essentially, you spoil your wife. How are you spoiling when you know what I mean? Like, you're gonna have to cut that. And then in modern society, we see that as an okay cut, and that's not okay. Or our kids don't get to have those certain opportunities. We always want to talk about, oh, the school system and it's behind and this, that, and the third. But if you are promoting having a family on just one income, you are robbing your own children of certain opportunities. Now, this doesn't say that, maybe the wife, okay, you won't work for a certain amount of time. Then as the kids get a certain age, blah, 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 blah. Or you know, because we're in a position where we're not that far off from each other as far as income. So if the woman goes to work and then the man goes to work, the man goes to work, then the woman, you know, every relationship is different. And that's a conversation for each couple to have. But just overall, like just even median net worth for white families in the United States is $1,071,000 compared to the black family, which is $17,150. If we are sitting here and saying that we want to create generational wealth, that we want, like, so are we doing that, or are we abiding by ego? Are we abiding by Western definitions of masculinity and femininity? Are we going by the Abrahamic way, or are we looking at our ancestors and saying, you know what? That might be a better alternative. So less than half of black families own their home. So that's only at 42% versus white families in the United States own their homes at 73%. And it has actually gone down because the highest rate for black family ownership was in 2004 with 49%. So we've never even, and we understand that property, maybe not necessarily, you know, because now things are changing and, you know, after post-COVID and our economy and so on and so forth. So, you know, I understand that things are changing, but it's the idea that we say we want certain things, but are we really doing it? Are we taking the steps, or are we just like, I'm a man, poke my chest out, I got 2 wives, I got this, I got that, look at me, I'm so strong. And at the women, I got a man, he pay all the bills, I don't gotta do nothing, I can, you know what I mean? Like, he buys some Birkins. Like, you're gonna have a Birkin, but your kid can't have certain opportunities. Okay, though, like, it don't go like that's not for Kemetic folks. That's not what we about. And I'm not saying don't have nice things, don't like nice things, so on and so forth. But again, it's about that priority,
right?
Overall. So throwing it out there. I know I've mentioned a lot about American culture or Western culture, and as well as Christian values, and how a lot of people bring that into Kemet when it doesn't belong. So I just want to throw the question out there, like, I guess in what ways can either you or the audience, like, how can we see that now so that we can try to cut it?
Well, I think that for me personally, it's a delicate balance, because some things become it's like almost part and parcel to how you operate. You know, this is what a man is supposed to do, and this is, you know, but as you start looking back at your ancient ancestors and looking back at African cultures and what they did and trying to apply it in a modern context, I always say it's that adage where you eat the meat and you spit out the bones. So you see what works and what you can apply in a modern context, and you extrapolate that, and then you leave behind what doesn't work. And so for me, when we talk about valuing the woman as an equal as opposed to a subordinate, and starting there and having that respect where you're not looking at her as an object, you're not looking at her as somebody who you can, just to be blunt, get your rocks off with. To have your babies, to leave in the house barefoot and pregnant, but this is an intelligent individual who goes out and gets things done. And often, and so like with, just for a prime example, for my wife and I, my wife is a vice president at the company she worked for.
Oh.
Yeah, she was Madam Vice President before Kamala. But as far as my business, all of the legwork, she did it for me. I do the labor, but taxes, establishing it, all of that. She did all that for me. If it, like I told her, I said, man, if we, I obviously I hope it never happens, but if
Don't
we,
say it.
but
Don't put it into existence. Nope.
but
I understand.
she would still have to do my books, and I'd just be telling her, hey, look, I have to hit her with, I'm your baby daddy. So because I could not function without her. And it's almost the business situation. It applies to our real life because I can't function without her in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that once you start establishing those type of connections to where this person is just a part of who you are, like thinking about, it's like I gotta have my hand. You know what I mean? That would be a hell of an adjustment if I lost his hand. And it's the same way with her. You have to start thinking about, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
you have to start thinking about your mate as an extension of you.
Mm-hmm.
We've been together all these years, and so my personality can be what's the best way to describe it? I can be cantankerous at times, and I say what's on my mind. I don't really have I don't put sugar on it, so to speak.
Like, let me give you some honey. Here goes some honey.
Right. See, she used to keep the honey with everything she did, and as we've gotten older, I put more honey on it, and she is just like, this is what it is. So it's almost like I've taken on some of her characteristics and approaches, and she's taking on mine. So I think just establishing that bond to where that person becomes y'all so intertwined that life without that person, even thinking about, like, you don't even want to say it. My voice I start losing my voice even trying to say it. So I think having that respect, looking at them as equals, not objects,
Mm-hmm.
not sources of income or this or that,
Mm-hmm.
and having that thought process that this person is an extension of me. I think that's an Africanized way of looking at your partner, and that'll go a long way forward in producing or perpetuating a healthy or healthier relationship.
And I have to say, I really wish there were more people who talked about marriage with single people in a positive way, because anytime, like I could tell y'all now, I would be at work and my coworkers, if you bring up marriage, oh, you don't want to do that, live your life, enjoy yourself, blah, blah. Like you always hear like life is over if you get married. And it's just like, that's not so. Like, I wish there were more people who are in long-term committed marriages that, you got to keep it real. Like, you don't want to sell a pipe dream, but at the same time, like, so many people get married and then feel like they're alone and they can't say anything, or they feel embarrassed that this is what's going on in my relationship, this is what's going on in my marriage, da da da. And then come to find out, we all going through hell sometimes. Right. That is the good, the bad, the ugly, and this and third. But it's like I know I call him my bigger brother. Like he said, like people got it twisted about what marriage is, because as soon as stuff gets hard, people are quick to throw the deuces, like, and that's not what it's about. But if you had married people who've been there, done that kind of a thing, they can help you get through, because the first thing social media will teach you is, if he cheat, that's it, I'm leaving, divorce, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, how many of our grandmothers didn't do that? And I get it, it was a different time and stuff like that. But the point is, they found a way to have that mental and emotional fortitude, even though it hurt. Now, could they have left? Yeah, there are plenty of women that left their families. There are plenty of men that left their families back in the day, and they would just go off to another state and get married. At least now, like, you can kind of find the person and stuff like that. But, it's that fortitude that, we lack in general. So I'm very thankful that you share that, and the fact that y'all been married for 24 years, like that's a whole human being, young person, worth of experience that so many people could learn.
And we do try to play it for, even with couples like our own age. It's funny how we'll get calls from friends and stuff like that, and we end up talking to them. But I think I take it as a personal responsibility to talk to men like that's younger than me, because I did having gotten married so early and coming in with a backwards mindset, I made a lot of mistakes. And so I tell her all the time, I can't promise a lot, but I can promise the way I hurt you then, I will never, ever hurt you like that. Like I may make a mistake, I may forget to pay a bill, or I may not notice that your tire was flat as I'm leaving for work, but I will never, I won't break your heart in that way again. Like I learned my lesson, because when you come close to losing somebody that's that precious to you, that mean that much to you, over something that you did. Now it ain't a mistake, it ain't a rumor, you guilty. And you ain't got nobody to blame but yourself. So that's a harrowing thing to have to live with. And so, and it's funny because you have like life lessons, and I tell young guys this all the time. Like when we separated once, and we were separated for not quite a year, but we got close to it, like late December to early August of the next year. And I got like low, and my brother called her like, hey, he's sleeping on the floor, he's drinking every day, I don't know what's going on with him. Now, mind you, she ain't even thinking about getting back with me, because she knew I wasn't in the right headspace for it. But she still, hey, you can come over here and sleep in the basement. You ain't got to sleep on nobody's floor. You can come over here and get yourself cleaned up. And, I'm never going to see you suffer if I can help it. Now, this is a woman whose heart I ripped out of her chest, but she's still making sure I'm good. And I'm just like thinking to myself, like, what, and so, the light bulb eventually go off. It just so happened I was 28, 29 years old when mine finally went off, but it do go off. So if I can keep any young man from perpetuating that same behavior, I tell them, bro, you don't want to make the same mistakes that I made. Like you can get through whatever it is, y'all, whatever faults it is. It's a lot of beautiful black women out here, but this is yours. I tell people all the time. I got little corny mantras. They probably corny to some brothers, corny to some women. I don't care if my wife get big as a house. That's my house. And she may be perfect, but she perfect for me. I keep it simple. So, and that's all. And it's the same way. I imagine as you courting and you getting to know people and you start figuring those things out. If you can't find a man, and I tell women this, who you are what's most precious to him, where he can't imagine life without you, then go find you a man that feel that way. Period. And that's all it is to it. Point blank, period.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, just in general, this idea, and this is why I tried to emphasize it. I'm gonna get like a little more into it in a little bit, but it's this idea of like we say, oh, I love this person. Oh, they love me, and it's just like when you put that at the forefront, and the first thing, because love changes. It changes as you grow. That person changes. You change. Like, you have like love is something totally different than, kind of what is marketed to us. And my thought is that if we went back to how the ancients did it, where it's about, okay, we're establishing a foundation, we're creating legacy together. and the love comes after to make sure that that legacy happens, then you can't give up. You won't give up. You won't do certain things because your mindset is in a certain place rather than I'm going to go, you know, dip off over here because I'm mad at them or they're not treating me this way or that way, or I don't want to talk to them, bump them, F them, blah, blah, blah. You know, because let's be honest, we all get there at one point in time, but at the same time, I've always looked at it as two things. Like when I'm looking at a mate, I look at two things. One, I want you to be there on my deathbed. Meaning, can I trust you completely with my life to make any and every call that needs to happen? And then two, just in general, can we really build together and be each other's peace? Because sometimes I'm gonna hate your ass, and sometimes you're gonna hate my face.
Facts.
But it's like, you know what? At the end of the day, this is who I have made a commitment to, and that commitment is more important than my temporary feelings. Then my, you know, maybe it was a trigger from something that happened back in the day. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like, you got to put it in check. Point blank period. Like, you just have to put yourself in check. So I wanted to build off of kind of like something that you had said earlier about this idea of the Africanness of looking at marriage and that being something that we need to pivot and approach marriage and relationships in that way. And so I wanted to point out, like, again, cleaning out what we grown up with, what we, you know, hear in society and so on and so forth, and understanding like, okay, this is something I need to move away from, because at the end of the day, that's poison. That is poison for my well. So like with Christianity and even Judaism, they have in Genesis, like God said to the woman, I will surely multiply your pain and childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. And it's this idea of like, I've heard so many women just talk about, oh, well, you know, I get treated this way because it's like an eternal punishment or something like that. And that was like coworkers that I was just like, oh, like they look at themselves as dirty. They look at themselves, and it's just like, well, as a Kemetic woman, I'm supposed to be healthy. I'm supposed to be, you know, about my beauty. And if I don't understand how this physical manifestation is supposed to work, if I feel shameful about this here, or I feel shameful about that, or I can't have a mature conversation about sex without it being
you know, or like, shameful. Like sex is this horrible.
Exactly. And we even see like in Islam where it says men are the protectors and maintainers of women. So again, it's like you're in charge and I have to tell you what to do. I just pull the strings and you move. And it's where a lot of people, especially when this conversation about polygamy, like how on one hand do you want to be African, because that's what a lot of people on that side was like, oh, I'm going back to my African roots. That's the way we did it. But then you're bringing in Abrahamic stuff into that Africanness. Like you can't do that. That's manipulative. I think the other piece about like American culture in general, like I think as we try to move forward and be more Kemet minded, we have to recognize like how American we really are. Like it's all we know. Like as much as we educate and read and this, that, and third, it's all we know. So I am an NPR nerd. I love listening to NPR. I specifically love the program Freakonomics, and they just so happen to have a radio show on the other day, and I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. So it was talking about how individualistic the United States is, and I was like talking about it with my mom when I was listening to it. It was like mind blown stuff, but you don't really think all the way about it. So, surprise, surprise, the United States is the #1 most individualistic country on the planet. Oh my God, surprise. So, as part of being an individualistic society, that means divorce rates are higher, a faster pace of life, inequality is, rampant, and the justification for inequality is rampant because of this individual mindset. And it's very, very different. Like if we look at England, Australia, Canada, like they're also individualistic, but they are what's called horizontal individualism versus the United States. Like we're like completely, when it comes to being individualistic, we're on a whole different sphere because we are vertically individualistic, meaning everybody else outside of me is my competition. Whereas in these other societies, I'm an individual, but I am a flower in a bouquet that came from a field of flowers, kind of a thing. And you kind of are an individual, but it's as part of the whole. And when it comes to relationships, how often do we find ourselves potentially competing with our mates? Like we're not actually looking at relationships as built together, but rather it's me and it's you over there, and maybe we'll do the same thing, maybe we won't. F you, you don't support me, you don't support me. And it's like, well, why? That was a conversation that should have happened. Right. But again, within our society, and I kind of said it earlier, where mothers are looking at their daughters as competition, fathers are looking at their sons as competition, like sisters are looking at each other as like we are so Americanized, we don't even recognize how it's ruining us. And then we try to bring that to Kemet, and it's like, nah, that's not how this goes. Another thing out of that radio program is they talked about power distance, and power distance has to deal with like inequality between people and how much we accept or don't accept inequality. So we're like around in the middle. But that's important because as a small power distance, so we're 40 on a scale of 100. So that means we try our best to speak out about inequality. Well, that's great on so many levels, but it also means that we don't like people telling us what to do. That's a problem. If your me is telling you, I need this, I need this, I need it like water, I need it like air, I need this, and you don't give it because, well, who do they think they are? Like, what? But that's how people come in relationships. And that's how so you even said like you try to speak to young men, but I even heard a story today about 3 people, and again, this is from my older brother, and he was saying how he, his cousin, and a friend of theirs wanted to do a rite of passage program with Baba Haru back in the day. And he and his cousin were like, yeah, I'm going to do this, that, and like they were excited. I can't wait, And the friend was just like, who does he think he is? I'm already a man. He can't tell me what to do. And it's like, he didn't say it in front of Baba's face, but it's just this idea of I pay my own bills. I stand, I pee standing up. Like, I'm my own man. And that, then later on, he says to the cousin and my older brother, like, yeah, now that I'm older and I went through all this nonsense, I wish I would have went through it. But it's like this hard-headedness. And again, this is part of how we raise our children. We raise our children to go out there and compete. Oh, you didn't get an A. Oh, you didn't win. Oh, they fought. Did you punch them in the face back? Like we have that and we teach that to our kids. So again, it's like, if we're going to be for Kemet, we got to understand like how much America is in our psyche. And that even goes towards like They have what's called masculine and feminine countries, or masculine and feminine societies. And it doesn't really, it does and it does not sound like how it sounds. So the United States is 62 out of 100 on this masculinity femininity scale. So a masculine society is driven by competition, achievement, specifically monetarily, success, and success being defined by being a winner, being the best in your field. And the value system, again, it starts in school. It starts with, you know, what we award our kids for, and again, if you're thinking about it as far as relationships, it does that whole power dynamic of, you know, and especially like when guys are saying these days, like, oh, women are too masculine, and that can mean many different things. But I have a feeling that this is what it has to deal with, because in our society, this is how we define, I am successful because I have X amount of dollars in the bank. I have this kind of car. I have this. And if you don't have these things, you're not on my level. You're not a high value, like kind of a thing. And that's very American, because on the flip side, a feminine society values caring for others and quality of life. So again, if we go back to those numbers before, where an upper middle class white collar African American man, his earning is about $78,000, and the living expenses are $60,000. Like it just makes things so much more like working harder, not coming home, not taking vacations with your family, not, you know, like you're always chasing the dollar, versus let's make memories together. Let's go to the baseball game to watch, you know, the kids play. Let's go visit family, instead of it being a chore or just something we do when there's a funeral or a holiday. And it's much different. And again, if we look at ancient Kemet, that was built into it. Like being a little more feminine, as opposed to just chasing the dollar, chasing the success, and what that looks like. And then there's two more. Long-term versus short-term orientation. I know it's going to be a surprise to everybody, but we are short-term oriented. So when we think about marriage, that's long-term. So sometimes, as I said, like we change over time. No one is the same, you know, as you were when you were 16, 18, 25, 35, etc. Like we constantly are changing. So when we're looking at marriage, sometimes those changes aren't instantaneous, short-term, you know, it's this idea of he better get with it or I'm going to leave. She better get it together and tell me what she's going to do. Like, nah, that's not how relationships work. Relationships are long-term. Could you imagine saying that to your mother? Like, you better change, or we've even had like parents that say, like, at 17, you better go get a job. At this, you better do this, and that's very short term. Like, I need help with these bills, which is important. But at the same time, you're putting your child in a certain position that is not necessarily, you know, healthy or good for them. And then the final one is indulgence versus restraint. So the United States is a 68 out of 100. We indulge in everything. So again, if we're being short-term minded, if we are being overly masculine as a whole, if we don't want people to tell us what to do, if we want to just care about us and everybody's our competition, don't date. If you're going to hold on to that stuff, don't date. Don't date. Don't go out having kids with people. Don't do all that, because that, or at least don't call yourself a Kemetic person and be about that kind of life, because that's not us. So I'm like, last section. I'm like, I told y'all. I'm like, I think.
Hey, look, you're doing your thing. You're doing your thing. So.
But
you see my man Black Lion in there, like, boom.
Yep. It's all about the balance, not this power dynamic that we've been kind of taught and socialized. So, it is imperative for us, as I said before, to understand that Kemet wasn't perfect, that, it had social hierarchy, it had, inequalities, it had, all different types of things going on. And it's illogical for us to say or claim to be Kemetic and not at least attempt to follow through on what the ancient Kemetic actually did. It's actually still a form of escapism. And it's interesting that people would say, oh, I left Christianity, I left this, because I want to be responsible. I don't need somebody in the sky to save me. And then they come to Kemet and just be like, I've arrived. I'm Kemetic. So that means it's all good. It's so just appreciating Kemet, just reading some books about Kemet, knowing history about Kemet is not enough, because it's just taking the place of what Christianity or the Abrahamic faiths used to be. And it's approaching Kemet as an Abrahamic person, and understanding that is like almost, it's I don't even want to say it's half the battle, but it's all part of the battle. So when it comes to, like, now that we've kind of gone through, this is what America has done to us, this is what these Abrahamic faiths have done to us, this is what the Kemetic actually did, I guess I want to throw it out there, like, so what should dating look like for us? Like, what should these things look like for us in general? So I'll just leave that simmer for 2 seconds.
It seemed like you make, because I always felt like this, especially after, because I told you we had a daughter at 16, 17. She's 28 now, married with her own children. So, I got my grandbabies, but I feel like, to me, we kind of let her get out there on her own too soon. Because I feel like Black people are only people like, oh, you 20. Why you still live at home?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, with the 3 that I still have at home, it's almost like I'm listening to you and I'm like, I should look at they potential mates, what they family like. Is this a good match? If it's not a good match, I shouldn't even let y'all go out. Like, you know what I mean? Because it is more to it than just, I like you and I want to get to know you. No, it's a lot more that go into it when you're talking about building a family and having children with this individual. It ain't just about feelings. At the end of the day, F your feelings, we got to start talking about what things gonna be like when it get. Can this individual handle adversity? Can he handle when things not ideal? When she ain't looking like she look right now? You know what I mean? When her ankles and her feet swollen because she carrying your child. Is she still, are those feelings you talking about you got still gonna be there? So, what's his relationship with his father like? What's his relationship with his mother like? All those type of things. So it's a lot more that go into dating and finding a potential mate than just, I want to go kick it with somebody and have fun and all of that. So, and I think when you look at what you said about the families have to approve the situation and they have to go through these steps before they actually get to this particular point. I think those are the elements that we need to pull into this modern setting and context.
Yeah, and we kind of even had that, like, oh, the guy has to go ask the family for the, before he even asks and said that. Let me tell you how I'm like, this is not nice, but I'm a snitch. So when like I said previously, like, I had been engaged, and he had asked me and I said yes. And then it didn't even occur to me until we had already like, went through all the, oh my God, all that stuff. And then I said, well, what did my parents say? And he looked at me like, and I was just like, you didn't ask them? You didn't ask them? So it's just like the fact that he didn't even think about that. And that was over 10 years ago. So Lord knows what the kids are doing now, kind of a thing. And it's just like, again, between American society and just everything changing, we're just so loosey-goosey, go with the flow type of a thing that we're all kind of screwed up on so many levels. So even if a person is not Kemetic, like just within, ourselves, like we don't court. We sleep with each other on the first date. I'll talk to you later. We got like, it's a Drake lyric where he says, we live in a time where we act like we're in love, or, we're not together, but we act like we're in love and we make it look good. I'm paraphrasing because those are not his lyrics. I'm not good at remembering lyrics. But he's like, we give the impression of love, but there's like,
right.
Zero.
We going through the motions.
Exactly. That's another one of his songs. Let me stop. I used to be a really big Drake fan. Like, I'm so sorry about that.
Oh, it's all good. We all got our, I'm a Nas and Tupac guy myself.
I love Nas. Oh my God. Okay, focus. Let me get back on it. So, I have, because I was thinking, I'm like, all right, this is what I want to put out there. I'm hoping that people will converse about it, talk to their kids about it, talk to friends, family, or what have you, because after looking at how the Kemetic kind of handled it, I'm like, all right, I kind of see where we kind of need to go. So the first step is, and I looked this up in the Vigus dictionary, but for some reason I didn't write down the page numbers this time, so I apologize. So it's called Sau, which means like healing and like total healing, medical healing, like just in general, as well as Menab. I feel like that's the step one. So without healing ourselves, we will only continue to have abusive, toxic, poor vibrational relationships, marriages, and families, point blank, period. So if we concentrate on that, and then also add on Menab, because we can say healing, but healing is a lifelong process. Like it's something that, I dealt with that. And then 3 years later, it comes up again. Like, I thought I dealt with that. So it's constant, but you have the Menab to be like, ooh, that's a trigger. Oh, that's a landmine. Oh, this situation might be related to something. And I say that a lot of times because a lot of women who self-identify as Kemetic, and I want to be very clear, when I say self-identify, it means exactly as it sounds. Like they're not necessarily part of a wider community. They may have, have some friends, throw on some clothes, and I'm Kemetic, and that's it. And the same goes for guys too. But for these women who have decided to leave Abrahamic traditions, have mostly done so because they were part of some sort of healing circle or rites of passage program. And in these rites of passage programs, like you're supposed to look at your traumas, you're supposed to look at your relationship with your mom, your dad, yourself, if you've been through abusive or traumatic situations, and really try to just heal yourself. Now, granted, these programs are 3 months long. So that is not going to heal a lifetime worth of stuff, but it's a good beginning, and some women continue to do so, and some women just kind of 3 months, I'm done. So, but that's been going on for at least within the Kemetic community for at least 40 years, where women are trying to maybe go vegan or just eat healthier, taking herbs, just worry about their physical temple, doing exercise, so on and so forth. And they're working on having a more healthy life. So then on the flip side, there are programs for guys. There are healing circles for guys. There are rites of passage programs for guys. Most of the time, it does have to do with like the younger ages, but they exist. They're out there, and they've been around for just about the same amount of time. But anytime you look at the pictures, it's way smaller group of guys. Way like we are still so attached to that idea of American Western masculinity of I don't have any problems, and if I admit I have problems, then
weakness.
I'll get clowned, and you know, like it just turns into this other thing. So, you know, I like to think of myself as a horse of a different color, and I just when we talk about sexism and things like that, I really like to like think about the men, because we often talk about what women go through and stuff like that. But, you know, men really aren't allowed to share their feelings. Like we were talking, I forget, in my classes, we always get like all over the place. And for some reason I had asked the students, and this was just a couple of months ago, and I was like, we were talking about crying. And it was the young men and the young ladies who were just like, I can't cry. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't cry? Like you have tear ducts. It just blew my mind. And one of my students told me that anytime he cried when he was little, his mom would literally punch him in the chest. And I'm like, I didn't know what to say to that. Like there are mothers out there that kick their sons out for the stepdad. I have at least one young man every couple of years where that's a thing. There are women who talk horribly, not just to their daughters, to their boys too. And it's just like we spend a lot of time talking about, you know, what daddy did and daddy wasn't there and just like, but mommy did a, you know, she did the best she could, and we're not going to say like, you know, kick her to the curb, and you know, because all of our parents did the best they could with what they had, with the education and life experience they had. Like even just this week, I had a conversation with two of my family members, and it blew my mind the amount of abuse that went on in my family that was way deeper than I was ever told. And that's because I'm the youngest of my group of cousins. And I was just like, knowing that gives me more grace towards my parents, because now I understand they didn't this, they didn't that. But if we're not, especially the men, like we need to create spaces where guys are allowed to not have to worry about being a word for a cat that starts with the letter P, because I hate saying that word. Right. But that's the first thing a guy is gonna say. Or, you know, like worrying about behaving masculine in front of another guy versus being worried about your healing and being like, I'm gonna just smoke it away. Like I had a kid in summer school who pretty much told me like he no longer lives with his mother because she would literally beat him every day. And it got so bad that she drug him out of the shower and drug him on the floor. And he has to go. And I'm just like, and you know, he was like, you know, I'm the type of teacher where I'm just like, look, I get it. Life happens. And if unfortunately getting high makes you be able to just function, it shouldn't be that way. But we have traumatized our kids and each other to the level that we have to self-medicate, and we don't believe in therapy, and we don't ask for help. And then we just, you're like, it just is this huge thing. So if we're really going to be committed to you, we need to heal what we've been through. We need to be able to sift through and get rid of and throw out the nonsense. And we need to, you know, stop worrying about that ego and really concentrate on, well, what am I really doing and what am I trying to do? And having the presence of mind to actually get you there and know like, ooh, that's a trigger. Ooh, that's the masculinity thing going. Let me chill out. Let me, you know, whatever. Or even the femininity, like, ooh, he's talking to me like how my mother used to talk to me, or, oh, they're using certain trigger words that my parents used to use. Like we have to be cognizant of that. especially because if the whole point of this is to build this house and to raise children, what you gonna pass on to your kids? Do you want your kids to be sitting on somebody's couch one day? Because respectfully, Gen Z is learning so much about mental health and how important that is. Like I'm telling you, sometimes they are really my heroes and sheroes because of how on top of some stuff that they are that we just kind of missed.
I kid you not. My 17-year-old know way more about mental health and things of that nature. Because, and this full disclosure, because my audience anyway have heard me say this before. So I've diagnosed bipolar 2. Mm-hmm. And when it first happened, I was like, when it was first suggested, I should say, I was like 23. And I walked out of that lady office like, bipolar, are you crazy? And so, I didn't deal with it, even though from about 20 or so to that point, I was the moods and things like that. I was displaying that behavior often, especially when I would, that coupled with alcohol. And so, it was like, but I wasn't trying to hear that because Black people, we don't, and so when I got older, and I told you about the separation, and that was kind of one of the prerequisites. Like, hey, you gotta deal with that if that's actually a thing. And so I'm like, let me go confront this. And even when I did, I still was kind of hesitant to tell people because of the stigma. Mm-hmm. And so, and mine is like I could almost feel like I know when I'm off, and a lot of people don't have that benefit. So, so for me, it's a lot easier to manage. But when, like anything, when it's bad, it's bad. And so to the point where my family, like, Daddy, you good? Because you can just tell when somebody in that place. But I say all that to say, when I started telling my family, so those who know me and was close to me, like my cousin, I got a cousin that's like a brother to me. He was like, thinking back, that make a lot of sense. Because I would get into fights at a club with people I ain't even know. Just straight up fights. And now, of course, everybody that's with me is fighting. So he thought back on some things and he was like, cuz that make a lot of sense, Or my sister was kind of like, okay. But my mother, she couldn't accept it. It was almost like it was an indictment on her as a parent.
And that's not the case.
Yeah.
And so I just again, I know I make faces, but I made that face because one of my parents are bipolar and deal with alcohol abuse and drug abuse. So I was like, oh, I know what that looks like.
So you really know exactly.
So when you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, you know it. Like you could just look at the person and be like, oh, I'm gonna go here because, and especially when that parent was not medicated or not self-medicating. Oh my God, that was like, not even like there's no word to describe that. It was they were a monster. I used to look at that parent as a monster.
Imagine being a young bride and having a young child and not even understanding that that's what this person going through. Mm-hmm. But still, and that's why I like it's very few things. It like can't nobody tell me nothing about my queen because she endured that and didn't know that's what it was. Like she didn't know what was going on with me. Mm-hmm. And so, holes in walls and just did, crazy, like physically touching her, but just, and so, and we in our early 20s. So, but things like that, like my mother, she, to this day, she got a hard time with it. And so, but my mother and I have a tumultuous relationship. Mm-hmm. So if there's something wrong with him, it might be my fault. My queen heard me, and me and my mother are good. Just for everybody listening, we good. I take good care of her. She, but then, like my queen heard my mother say, she wished she would have got an abortion. when we were teenagers.
Mm.
Of course, she regrets saying it, but she said it, and that had an effect on me from the time she said it till the time we both moved on from it. But
Mm-hmm.
because I tell people all the time, you can punch somebody and it'll heal, but you can't forget what somebody say.
Nope.
And so, it's interesting you were saying like with the abuse your students went through, and I remember going through those similar things. And when I'm 6'2", 280 now, and as I was getting taller as a kid, it was just certain things my mother couldn't physically do to me anymore. And when she realized it, it was like, all right, go live with your grandmother. It was like, and I remember one time, like she would still come and get me because I'm her child, and you feel like that's your responsibility. And one day my grandmother just came and got me and was like, he ain't coming back. And I never did. But
Mm-hmm.
like I say, we good now because healing, it take time, and you just got to get to a place where you move on from that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know that I carried that anger with my mother to my relationship with my wife subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing when we dealing with children and abuse and things that we perpetuate in them, they carry it to their relationship, and
Yep.
then it spreads to the children. Now the children are traumatized, and they carry it to their relationship. Case in point, my daughter watched my wife endure a lot. Me being undiagnosed bipolar, me being unfaithful. So when her and her husband go through things, that for me, I'm like, look, you just need to cut bait. And it's in hindsight, it's bad advice. If y'all can get through it, get through it. But being angry because your daughter being mistreated, you say things, right? And her defense is, well, mama stayed with you. Daddy, you changed. And it's like a slap in the face because damn, but that was her process. She literally watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Then and she watched the gradual change. But I'm not even realizing everything she saw informs her on what marriage is supposed to be. So you don't cut tail and run when it's difficult because that's not what her mother did. And even though when I feel like she's being mistreated, I want to hurt somebody. I gotta let that process play out because they married. Like you said, I'm married now. So, but it do kind of. That's why I'm careful, or I try to be more careful now with her younger siblings, because everything in her marriage is informed on what she saw in me and her mother marriage.
Exactly. Exactly. Which is exactly why I said nope, healing first. Like how they say you can't nobody love you till you love you, like all of that. All of that's in there. So, if it's self-esteem, and we like to talk about self-esteem like it's just a woman thing. Like, nah, there's a lot of dudes out here who super insecure, super like low self-esteem, and so on and so forth. That it's like, nah, that's gonna play out a certain way in the relationship, and it's like you're putting yourself through undue stress and pain rather than just go through it and figure it out. And I even said to that one student, and I'm like, I have to be careful with this one, but that student has a certain diagnosis. And in our conversation, I said, well, what does that look like for you? And the student was just like, oh, well, I just can't do X, Y, and Z. But I could tell it had to do with the self-esteem there. And I'm like, whoa, if you understand the diagnosis, that's the chemicals in your brain. That's like, it's so many other different things. When you understand what that looks like, that means not that something's wrong with you, but, I have to be on extra alert.
Right.
I have to, let me make sure, like, I can't eat refined sugars because that's going to make me go. Go off or whatever. Like, I have to, I need to break things into small tasks because if I try to just sit for 3 hours, it's not going to happen. Like, you understand None of us are normal. All of us have to have certain strategies to get through life. Like, so, but if you understand yourself, you understand your trauma, you understand if you have diagnoses and things like that, well, this is what I need to do to have the best quality of life.
Exactly.
Like, but it's a totally different mindset, you know, especially within our community, like how you said, well, if so-and-so has to get a diagnosis, that means I did something wrong or something's wrong with them, they're defective. And it's like, no, that's totally not the case. Like there are 31 flavors, 51 how many flavors of ice cream, how many kinds of bread, how many, and you expect people to all be one way? Like, come on, it's unrealistic. Yep. So in addition to that, while one is in like this step one, think about finances. You know, like think about finances, think about career, think about that kind of thing. Because once you commit and create the foundation, like, you know, again, I said, everybody wants to talk about, well, what do you bring to the table? Who are you bringing to the table? How are you going to show up as well as establish this table? And how are you going to, like, and what qualities do you need in your mate to help build and create this legacy, to build this table, to set this dinner? You know, because it's not about what can you do for me or what are you going to do for me? Like, no. That's not Kemetic. So understanding yourself, knowing your communication style, knowing, you know, maybe sometimes your tone of voice gets crazy. Maybe sometimes maybe that don't work for everybody. Like, you know, recognizing that so that we understand, like, again, if it's about that foundation, what are my shortcomings? So where do I need my partner to be strong? Where, if I, you know, these are my strengths. So if they're weak here, this is what it is. Like, how are we going to work together and not just argue all the time and jump into something that is just going to be more pain and more, you know, tomfoolery, for lack of a better way of saying it. So even as you're kind of segueing into like the actual courtship, you're going to think about gender roles, and not in a superficial type of a way where it's like, I need you to cook, I need you to do the laundry. You're like, okay, that's all of that is superficial, because again, let's be real, we're all going to get old one day. What if your mate gets cancer? So you're going to get divorced because they can't cook for you anymore? Like, you're never going to learn how to, you know what I mean? Like, there's going to always be that pendulum swing. Somebody's going to get sick, somebody's going to get fired and lose a job. Something's going to happen. So you can't be so rigid in gender roles and your femininity or your masculinity. Like, if your husband becomes disabled, girl, go out there and work. Now you got to be the breadwinner, like, you know, and he can't feel some type of way because of his maladies. Like, you know, you have to have that kind of relationship because you don't know what life is going to throw at the both of you. So contemplate what you want to bring to the table, what you want legacy to look like, what you like do, because there are some people who don't even want children. There are some people who can't have children. So are you okay with fostering? Are you okay with adopting? Are you okay with not having kids at all? Are you okay with, because you could still establish legacy, you know, to be real in 2021, it's expensive to have a kid. So you can have technically legacy without the kid, but legacy may be, well, let's start a scholarship for kids to go to school. Let's, you know, like you could do other things that give back to building the community and establishing your name and doing for your family without necessarily having to have kids, especially if it's not possible. So this is where I know some people are going to be like, no. So after establishing what, you know, it looks like for you, you go out with people, you know, you really are dating with intention, as other people say. You're dating with intention. When you find someone, you don't need to date forever and ever and ever. Like, dating for an exponential long time, something's not right. So and if we look at our ancestors, they didn't court and date for 3, 4, 5, 10 years, have a kid, and then do all this other stuff. Like, it was kind of like, all right, you down? Yeah, I think I'm down. You want to do this? Yeah, I want to do this. These are our life goals. Okay. Like, it was, again, the love came, but it's like, are we going in this direction? Do we want to go in this direction? So, there are some things where it's like, okay, 3 months or something like that. My rule of thumb would be about 6. By the time 6 months happen, you know the person well enough. Are they a runner? Are they, a ride or die? Are they, and you don't know 100% because, time, situation, so on and so forth. But the idea is you generally know if this is a person for you or not within that 3 to 6 months. So at that point, Menyet encourages looking into engagement. And as our ancestors did, they had that year of eating. So your engagement period should be your year of eating. So not necessarily like, we just gonna shack up and like, you just move into my apartment with me and we're gonna play house. Like, no. We're not doing that. So during this year of eating, you all move into a mutual place. You sign a 1-year lease with both the names on it. You create, this is what we're doing. These are the things that I'm going to do. These are the things you're going to do. Both of your sets of parents are involved. You write everything out, get it notarized. So essentially, it's like an engagement prenup, if you will. And it has an expiration date. You can't stay engaged forever. You're either going to poop or get off the pot, as they say. So you doing the damn thing or are you playing games? So again, this whole thing about and again, there are things that would need to be discussed because each couple is different. If somebody already owns property, if somebody already owns this, that, third, maybe you already live in a house and you can't afford rent, and then renting out your house, that might be a lot. But again, both sets of parents are involved. You two are involved. This is what this engagement period is going to look like. In addition to that, you find yourself a temple, shrine, or Kemetic community to become a part of. Because again, when we're part of a community, we keep each other accountable. When you have other married people around you who understand, when you have people who are on your path, like, yo, you messing up out here. That's not what we're about. It keeps us on the straight and narrow, and it keeps us accountable to ourselves, to who we say we want to be, as well as to our mates, or our, at this point, soon to be mates. I would encourage going to some sort of couples counseling or premarital, y'all know what I'm saying.
Premarital.
Thank you. I was like missing a letter in there somewhere. And this courtship agreement or this engagement agreement, the idea is from that expiration date, y'all need to be married within 3 months. There is no, let's just extend it. And granted, again, people lose jobs, people, you know what I mean? I understand things happen, but again, it needs to be agreed upon between everybody. Not just, he said he'll marry me, or she said she's gonna get a job, or you know what I mean? You can't be so rigid, but at the same time, you also don't want to drag your feet, because again, if you're establishing legacy, you don't need to drag your feet at that. So then we move into the marriage. So I'm gonna say the horrible thing that people hate, and that is prenup. Get a prenup. I don't care if you work at the Gap. I don't care if you work on Wall Street. I don't care where you work. The whole point, just like our committee had a marriage contract, a prenup. If you want to get an actual marriage contract, that's fine. But it's essentially the same as what we have as a prenup now. So And again, your families are both involved. You're saying, this is the property I have. This is the property you have. This is, if we get married and we divorce, that's still yours and this is still mine. If, you kind of talk about alimony, where you could say, no, let's not do alimony or palimony, because, it doesn't just all go one way to the woman. It goes to the man too. Look at Mary J. Blige. So, it doesn't, it makes things easier. You talk about, do you want kids? Do you not want kids? Do you want to, if one person already has kids, that is one thing. Again, like, I know with the whole Kevin Samuels, if she already got a kid or some kids, then you were being careless and blah, blah, blah. Like, that don't exist in Kemet. Remember, if you just wanted to marry somebody else, you could get divorced. If you, like, there was no stigma. That's only a stigma here because we have that whole idea of like, bastardization in this and third. And I'm not saying that there wasn't a similar kind of concept, but it wasn't about being born out of wedlock. It's, we ain't know who your daddy was. And if it's about legacy and we don't know who your daddy is, like, that's messing with Ma'at, that's messing with foundation. But it wasn't because the kid was born out of wedlock and all that other nonsense. So again, you want to talk about investments. If you all invest together, how y'all are going to split it in case of a divorce. If y'all going to work, who's going to work? Who's going to pay bills? Who's like, it literally, you outline, this is what we agreed to. And now I'm going to say the other P word people don't like, polygamy. That is something that y'all need to talk about before you get married. Like, okay, what if we get to the place where you can't have kids? What if we get to the place where I'm a multimillionaire? Would you, like, you discuss that beforehand. And if you all do decide, yep, that's okay, it goes in the prenup. It goes in the marriage contract. So everybody is on the same page. There is no whoops, surprise. If there is, you amend the prenup, which is actually relatively easy to amend your prenup or your marriage contract. And then when that other woman comes in, you amend that too. What is she entitled to? What is she not entitled to? This and third. Because again, if this dude passes away or if this woman passes away, like, what's going to happen with the kids? What's going to happen? Like it again, we want to be accountable. We want to be responsible because, again, this is all about legacy, not about, it feels nice. So all of that goes in there. You could put a sunset clause in there like, yo, if we married for 50 years, you stuck with me. Like, it is what it is. So there are so many different ways to get that done. But I just, again, if you're going through this process and being intentional, all of it needs to be intentional, not just whoops, okay. There was one thing I forgot to mention earlier, which I had it written down, but I forgot to say it. So during the courtship and what's the word I'm looking for? An engagement period, both parties need to agree to practice safe sex and fertility awareness. Because if you're in the year of eating and you're not necessarily fully committed to each other and children now come out of this, that's causing, like, that's throwing it all off. The whole point is, not like, let's be real, grown folks are going to copulate. Like, we're not going to sit here and act like you're going to sleep next to a man or sleep next to a woman and not, be intimate. That's just ridiculous. So, but we want to make sure, again, whatever method, and as I said, it's not just safe sex. Like, Menyet does not say, yes, go take the pill. Like, nah, I don't agree with that. But whether it's condoms, whether it's, I don't want to say IUD because those are not necessarily safe, but practicing fertility awareness, understanding, again, if the woman is understanding the body, the man understands his body, we understand that at certain times ovulation happens, that just having sex once doesn't mean you're getting pregnant. There's only pretty much 3 specific days within a 5-day period that a woman can get pregnant. any other day that week, unless she has health problems, unless, stuff like that is going on, like sex doesn't automatically equal a baby. But again, because of Abrahamic ways, like we don't even understand the way the female body even works, which is weird, but that's another conversation for another day. So practicing those two things ensures that, all right, once we're really committed, we're in it for the long haul. Kids, babies, all of that other stuff is of no consequence. Now we can, finally do that last due. But that is my recommendation, just because, again, it's staying within lines, because technically the year of eating would happen after actual spiritual and legal marriage. But again, it's very expensive to get divorced in the United States. So that's why I say that engagement period is your year of eating. So this way, if that lease ends, y'all could go separate if you decide you don't want to be together. Whereas you don't have to incur all that other stuff. So that's why it's placed that way, as opposed to after the actual spiritual and legal marriage. So again, as I said, polygamy, yes, it was permissible, but again, it was for aristocracy. It was for infertility. It was for just in general to take care of other folks within the community. It was not, I'm a man, I have money, I need wives to show off with. And I even throw that question out, where it's like, outside of a certain status, why does the everyday regular guy need another wife if it's not just for sex or ego? So
my bad, I was muted. I said that's a good question.
Yeah, it's illogical, and it's funny because a coworker of mine from Nigeria, she even said, she was just like, oh no, like we have a saying, if you have more than one wife, you either have 3 or 5, 1, 3 or 5, you never have just 2. Because she basically said, because they poison you, or they'll come in together, or it'll be too much fighting. So it's just like, and I'm like, and that's a whole different ball of wax. But right. I just thought that was funny, like, oh wow, so it's not even about 2, it's more than that. So, but I'm gonna throw that across the room. And the last thing is divorce. So again, we are not of the Abrahamic faith. You're like, yes, you make a commitment, but sometimes if it's abusive, if the person isn't agreeing to the marriage contract, if, for whatever reason, divorce is totally allowed, it's okay. But Menyet's recommendation would be, because you are part of a temple, shrine, or Kemetic community, you go to your elders, you go to your other married couples, you all seek counseling, and you do it not short term, you do it for at least 3 months. You go see a marriage counselor, you all do a rites of passage program together, you all do something to try to, again, because it's about legacy, it's not about your feelings. So if your mate hurt your feelings, the idea is we want to at least try to give opportunities of healing to be able to move forward to maintain said legacy. But if after those 3 months, I mean, honestly, some things might need longer, but just at least as a minimum, a bare minimum of going to therapy and really actually trying to salvage what's there instead of just walking away. Again, outside of extreme situations like he's trying to kill you for insurance money or something off of TV. So those are my recommendations. Those are my thoughts. And that's it.
Mute. So I thoroughly enjoyed this this breakdown, because I think that a lot of people just feel like, or have like preconceived notions of what dating while Kemetic is like, what marriage and being Kemetic is like. Almost like it's all about indulging oneself as opposed to the responsibility and
Mhm.
the actual undertaking that it is, and the upholding of my eye,
Mhm.
staying away from isfet and all of those things. It's like you just took that off the table, and you just thinking about how you're gonna indulge in the benefits and the pleasures of married life, but not the immense responsibility that
Mhm.
you undertaking. And dating is supposed to be a step towards married life, and we seem to forget that too. But so I definitely enjoyed the breakdown, because I think you covered every facet you could cover. I think what did my man saying, Love Jones? Let me break it down so it can forever and completely be broke. I think you just did that. So I definitely appreciate it. I think the audience appreciated it. So
I'm glad, because I just know this is an important conversation. And you know, even within the temples and the shrines and stuff like that, like there isn't enough conversation as to what Ma'atic and Kemetic relationships look like. And it's just like this kind of disconnect where we have people dating and we have like, but it's not Kemetic, which, and I remember earlier in the chat, somebody said, dang, like dating Kemetic was worse. Like, because it isn't, you know, like we don't talk about it. We just,
right.
it's like regular dating. So, you know, I'm hopeful that by at least having our conversation, that other conversations are able to happen, and that the different temple and shrine communities can just kind of say, well, yeah, this is how the ancestors did it, or if they want to modify or add on, take away, whatever, that's cool. But it's the point that something's out there is a standard for us, and this is where we do it. Because again, if we're leaving the Abrahamic traditions, what do we have? What are we doing?
Right.
And we're only going to be left to kind of rely on what we grew up and learning and stuff like that. So, you know, I just really hope that people take it and just continue the conversation.
Yeah. Look at the screen real quick.
Ah, Dua Ikarati,
And I got another one.
Dua Black Lion.
And so I think it definitely had the reaction that we wanted and hoped for. And I think, in all honesty, I think that my man Kim Ra thoroughly enjoyed this breakdown. Saber Kim Ra, my bad for not putting your title on, my brother. But I think that, in all honesty, and I think people in the chat will agree with me. And matter of fact, for those who left, you can put a 1 if you agree. I think this breakdown, as far as the temples and the shrines, could be used, especially for the younger people, because some older people are kind of stuck in their ways. But for the younger people who we looking to kind of say, this is the way we need to start doing this, this could easily be broken down and used as a model to start teaching them how to get to those steps, in my opinion, because I think you were very thorough in how you broke it down. So, and that, again, that's just my opinion, but and we already got a 1, so I think the people agree as well. So I definitely enjoyed it, and of course you have carte blanche to come back on this platform whenever you want. So I'm sure I'll think of something that I need your insight on here in the coming months, so or coming days. So, but yeah,
That's fine with me.
absolutely a powerful build, and much needed. And the other thing about it is, it's a lot of like, we either, I see two things that we do when we move away from Abrahamic faiths and come, whether it's Kemetic spirituality or just a more African centered mind state. We superimpose, we either superimpose Abrahamic ideologies onto these African uh, traditions, or we just go completely left, like we ain't supposed to have any morals now that we Kemetic or whatever it is we professing to be. And it's like, nah, that's, if anything, we're supposed to have more. We're supposed to be even, like, we talking about truth, justice, and reciprocity. What are you, how you think you just living however, you know? So I think that this also went a long way to alleviate some of those myths. Like, nah, bruh, you can't just come in thinking you could do whatever you want to do with any sister you want to do it with and just leave her emptied in your wake. You have a responsibility and an obligation to this queen, and the same way in the reverse. So
I was going to say that.
oh yeah, I try. I'm a Libra as well as a follower of my. So I try to be as balanced I could be, as well as my chemical imbalance. I try to keep balanced also. So
You
yeah,
doing good. You fine.
I can joke about it. So, but yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed it. You got some ones in there, so excellent breakdown. So definitely, we gotta have you back. And any closing words, comments, anything you want to promote or anything like
that? Lord, I got a list. No, well, one, I wanted to just say Ahkh Wdja to you for just giving me the opportunity to come speak to your audience. I thank the audience for being here and just listening to me. We on 2 hours and 44 minutes. So I appreciate y'all for hanging in there. I appreciate the people watching the replay. Just in general, just having appreciation, not only for being Kemetic, but really living this lifestyle and living this culture. So just much appreciation to you and to the audience. Like, just thank you so much. So promotion wise, I do have my website, MenyetAnkhEnMaat.com. So that is where my blog is housed. I have Kemetic Resources. So one of the projects I'm working on now is creating a nationwide list of Kemetic temples, shrines, and communities, just because you know, it's one thing to be in different Facebook groups and online groups, but it's nice to be able to have a study group that's, you know, maybe 30 minutes away from the house, or just a local group that you can connect to. And, you know, all groups are different. So even if it's virtually connecting with a group, I really am trying to just kind of bring us a little more together by giving that resource out there. So far I do know of the Temple of Anu here in New Jersey. I know of the Shrine of Ma'at over in Harlem, New York. I know you said you have your Shrine of Het Haru. You have Raseki down, I forget which state they're in. I'm sorry about that. I know there's New Aset Temple out in Cleveland, Ohio. So those are the ones I know of. So I have a form. So if anybody in the audience knows of a shrine or temple or community, if you could just add that in there, because you know, people want to have that community, and it's really kind of a disconnect. Although the internet does help, like it just would help us as a wider community. I also launched my Ahkh Wdja, which is essentially a Kemetic online shop. It's a place for our spiritual needs. So like I created like face masks. So I know some people are like, oh my God, it's not even real. But in case you want to rock the Netaru on your face mask, and it's African centered, we got Kemetic greeting cards for our holidays. So our most recent holiday was Repwin Pet, or the opening of the new year. So in our new year, Kemetic New Year is 6262 right now. We got coffee tumblers, posters. Like one of the posters I have now, and I keep this in my bathroom. So, ooh, there I go. So it's the 42, and like this is my there I go. This is my version of Ma'at, and I just wanted it to be like faceless so that people could identify. Like it's an outline, but it's not. That has to be one way that Ma'at looks. So I keep that actually in my bathroom. So when I brush my teeth, I'm reading the 42, and I have another one on my front door. So that's on there. We got incense, Ancestor Money. Like the idea is other faiths have a place for them to go for their spiritual needs. And as Kemet to you, like, it's a little bit here, a little bit there. So my goal is to try to just have a one place. And then even if someone in the audience, if you are a Kemetic creator and you want to become an affiliate, I'm working on an affiliate page, because I know a brother who he makes yoga mats with the Netaru on it. There's some temples that have different items that they create, so on and so forth. So I do have a promo code if anybody wants to patronize the Ahkh Wdja. And it's actually from today until my birthday, so the 27th of August. And the promo code is relationships6262. So again, relationships6262, and that will give you 25% off of your order. I'm also on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. So I do have the private group, Kemetic Living in the 21st Century. I started a singles group a year ago, but I kind of started pouring more into the other group than that. But it is there, and it's supposed to be a place where if you are Kemetically aligned, that, you know, you can try to find a Kemetic mate with that. So that's me.
And do me a favor when we get off, inbox me your site and all of that, because I'm gonna put it in the description for the video as well. So
Okay.
make sure everybody can find that and start supporting the queen and picking up some of that merchandise. So please support our queen, and like I say, we're gonna have her back and get some more of these powerful breakdowns. But with that said, hold on,
yes, that is it. That is the promo code.
So with that, all I have to say is do our queen for gracing us with your divine presence. Like I say, you are invited back. You have carte blanche. So I'm gonna try to hurry up and think of something so I can have you back sooner than I did this last time. But I'll figure something out. And thanks to the audience, everybody in the chat, for coming on and joining us. And before we get out of here, I got a little promo work I got to do, if I can figure out how to do my screen share. Those who know, I got a debate coming up on the 28th of this month with my brother, Captain 10K of ISUPK. And so I want to make sure I show this before we get out of here. Everybody come back and watch me beat up on my brother Captain. Even though he think he gonna beat me up, you know, we'll see. We'll end up seeing how it go. But
knowledge itself is important. I get the feeling.
Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
So that is August 28th. I'm gonna have to go beat up my brother on that particular subject, even though he think he gonna beat me up. So y'all tune in for that. come back and watch your boy do his thing. So we'll see what happened. And hopefully, sis, you'll be in the building. So
I'm gonna be in the comments like, nah, he not right because
right, exactly. So we're gonna be talking about old King James and
oh Lord,
did our Native American brothers and sisters own slaves? Because apparently they Israelites, and we're gonna get into all of that. So
oh boy.
so yeah, it's gonna be a fun night. That's Saturday, August 28th, at I think it's at 8 p.m. But so yeah, y'all come back and check us out. So again, hotel, dua to our queen, and this has been Paradigm Shift TV 314. We'll be back at y'all again with some more powerful content. Till next time.